Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here to the fourth cup, the second of 8.2 here in the summer season. This is Europe on Friday, and we have our top 8, now top 7 teams for the cup, since we did just eliminate our first team, the DHDK Nation, and Penguins will advance through to our top 6 that we'll see later today. Now we must eliminate another team, and these two teams, I think it's fair to say, are both very well known. nLite has had a lot of success throughout the year. You know, we see them in the top 8s all the time. Maybe the meta hasn't been favoring them in the past, but now even the slightest change to the Discipline Priest and Zoniaki's back on top, won the last cup. And Zizon, you know, this kind of newly founded roster, Drainer coming together with Jamie, who was removed from Diabolos. And I mean, they've found some real success. So this is a kind of two massive rosters coming together in the lower bracket, and one of them will be sent home, Zico.
Yeah, and this is a very high-stakes match as well, because Zizon is number 2 on the all-time standings right now for the summer qualification, and nLite, they're only, you know, about, I believe, 70 points behind, so it's going to be a very, very close match, and of course, if Zizon or nLite gets knocked out, that's one of those teams that are in the running right now getting dropped out, which of course means that the remaining teams have a chance to kind of swing up their lead or get up a point swing here. And you know, Zizon, I expect to see the prot come out from these guys, but I think nLite can deal with it.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see what the two teams do lock in. This is the blind pick. It does look like Jamie actually is going to be coming in on the Elemental Shaman. So this is a Thundercleave going up against the Retribution Paladin Warrior. And just to your end, before we do hop into the game here, I do want to shout out that Zizon is second on points by 60. But if they were to lose this, you know, they'd only get 20 points today. And that kind of 5-way almost tie that we see in Europe just below them would catch up. It would blow all of those positions wide into the open. So Zizon definitely need a victory here, but nLite, they have the momentum from last week.
Maybe the prop paladin was a bait by Zizon to perhaps get nLite to lock in a peculiar composition, but nLite go for the standard comp that won them the series last week against Zizon. Zizon, though, are mixing it up, not running that Destruction Warlock. I think that was a wise decision on their part, but since the Restoration Druid Nerf Trainers opted for the Mistweaver, no way of the Crane from him, not really an aggressive Mistweaver build, much more of a fatiguing late game play there on his part, but with the Retribution Paladin bringing in the Blessing of Wisdom, I think Tana with that Chain Heal build is likely to be able to extend this match for some time. Very interesting to see these teams going head-to-head now that Restoration Druid has sort of fallen out of the meta, at least for the teams that don't have Rogue Mage. I feel like the teams that have Rogue Mage, we're still going to see a lot of Druid from them, that being Diabolos and Method Orange and Change My Mind, or Method Black, sorry, and Change My Mind. I feel like those three teams, we're still going to see a bit of Druids, but for the Cleaves and the other compositions, Paladin, Shaman, and Mistweaver are all a lot more prevalent.
You know, this is what we wanted to see from Zizon last week. Instead of that Destruction Warlock, who's not very mobile and kind of susceptible to just getting dampened by the Retribution Paladin Arms Warrior, you have Jamie on the Elemental Shaman. He's going to fare a lot better, going to be able to kite around in Ghost Wolf, use the Thunderstorm to free himself from Kara, and be able to actually create some distance in this matchup. There's been good pressure for both teams so far. Leg Sweep comes in from Drainer on Kara, on Zuniaki, and that's going to be Blessing of Sanctuary by Kara to free himself from that. And right now, nLite completely stabilized. Actually, both teams stabilized. I think this could be one of those matchups that end up coming down to mana. And like you kind of alluded to, Sid, Kara with the Blessing of Wisdom is going to give Tana a little bit of an advantage in that regard.
We have to wait and see. Drainer opting to trade Life Cocoon at this moment. No cooldowns really for it, so that's one out of the way for nLite. Potentially an opening here as Avenging Wrath and Avatar are going to be available for Zuniaki and Kara. Zuniaki repping that Discipline Priest, the only one to win with a cup on it. Now also flexing, playing the damage dealing role on that Warrior as well. Last time we saw Zuniaki playing Warrior was at BlizzCon against you, I believe, Venruki. So these guys have been playing together for some time. It's certainly quite an accomplishment on Zuniaki's part. Still going strong, still multi-classing, multi-rolling, not having a Restoration Druid whatsoever on their team and somehow making it work, taking the last cup and looking to try and stay alive in this one. So far looking solid for them. Mana lead, momentum lead, cooldown lead.
Actually, Zuniaki played the Restoration Shaman against me. It was Kara.
Oh, it was Kara playing it.
Yeah, so
people flip-flop
a little bit of history for you there, Mr. Sid. Kara gets knocked away with that Thunderstorm. He's been taking a little bit of burst in this damage. The Stormbolt comes in from Nerd Rage. They're looking to get some pressure rolling. Tana responds with the Ascendance, managing to find some heals onto Kara. Drainer now with the Life Cocoon is going to be keeping Nerd Rage alive for now. Both Warriors going to be having that disarm, so in moments where team is scary or is scared and on the back foot, they can choose to use that disarm to basically make it so someone can't deal melee damage anymore, and that's what we're going to be looking to see from these Warriors as one of the main parts of the defensive toolkit. Zuniaki and Kara actually had a surprising amount of uptime on Jamie. I really thought that the Elemental Shaman would be able to kite a lot more effectively, but I guess with the Unbound Freedom, this is something that sort of swings the tide potentially in the Ret and Warriors' favor.
Could possibly be here with that honor talent change for Retribution Paladins. We're seeing a lot more of them, certainly in the competition, at least Kara succeeding on it. I'm wondering if we see any Retribution Paladins from the other teams as well, if nLite continue to have the success that they currently do. Tana caught in an intimidating shout, but it looks like he's actually the target for Nerd Rage. So he's going to be trying to go after the healer, but Kara is going to protect him. Nerd Rage is going to leap back, support Jamie, disarming Zuniaki, preventing him from connecting with that avatar. Well-timed disarm there on Nerd Rage's part. That's going to allow Jamie more than enough time to escape. Both teams fairly stable now at this period in the fight, roughly 30 seconds away from dampening, and that's really going to be the name of the game, is who is favored in dampening? Is it the Restoration Shaman? Is it the Mistweaver? Right now, you would normally expect the Mistweaver's mana to be better, but the Retribution Paladin shores up that weakness with Blessing of Wisdom. So as far as mana is concerned, it actually looks like it's more favorable to Tana. Then it comes through how much throughput can the healers put out? Can a Shaman out-heal a Mistweaver? That I'm not sold on. I think the Mistweaver's healing is quite potent, especially single targets. So this could be a weakness for Tana. Can he deal with it is the question. We're still a couple minutes away. This is a matchup that we've yet to see this year, so it's difficult to anticipate who is actually going to get ahead with all of the changes. Patch 8.2 with the new essences. This is anyone's match here as dampening begins.
Yeah, and the thing is, if Tana can hold on to enough mana, that's when they can do sort of an all-in strategy a little bit later on. With the Restoration Shaman Purge, it's really effective against the Mistweaver Monk. You get off the Renewing Mist and the Enveloping Mist. It's a lot of the healing potential that Drainer does have available. So, if Drainer falls behind, and that's when Tana gets aggressive with Purges and with Wind Shears onto Drainer, that's when things can start snowballing out of control for Zizon. So, they have to hold on. A nice Hex secured here by Jamie onto Tana. Keep in mind, when Tana gets Hex, there's no Curse Dispel from Kara or Zuniaki, so he sits all of that crowd control full. Hex into a full Intimidating Shout. Drainer there with a Paralysis as well. Good pressure. They managed to force out the Safeguard, but I can't help but feel like Tana's going to be able to easily recover from the situation if he can land a Chain Heal. Are we going to be able to see it? Actually goes for the Healing Wave. Tops off Zuniaki. And now it's going to be Nerd Rage on the back foot.
Yeah, Nerd Rage in a lot of trouble here. What cooldowns are they going to trade? They're trying to hold on to them using Disarm and Crowd Control to stall the damage long enough for Drainer to stabilize. They don't want to be using that Dive of the Sword until they absolutely have to. It's a 3-minute cooldown. Not likely to see it again in this fight. Jamie getting swapped too as nLite see Life Cocoon active on Nerd Rage. They're going to hit a more vulnerable target. That banks them 2 cooldowns for 1 push, with Astral Shift gone from Jamie and Life Cocoon gone from Drainer. Perfect swap by nLite. They continue the momentum by stunning Drainer and disarming Nerd Rage, isolating Jamie. Kara with Avenging Wrath active, going to be dealing a lot of damage towards Jamie. Drainer rolls in, stuns Kara away, but Jamie line of sighting Drainer. He's going to have to Transcendence next to him. Jamie on the run, start to finish. After those recent nerfs to Pack Spirit, I'm not sure if Jamie will be able to recover through this deeper into dampening. The mana lead is established, and the one thing that the Restoration Shaman brings is Purge as well. If Tana maintains high amounts of mana and they can remove the Renewing Mists, remove the Enveloping Mists, it could be game over. Zizon need to do something quick. Fortunately, they've got a good crowd control chain going right now. They could get a Divine Shield. They do manage to get Spirit Link Totem, at least from Tana. A big cooldown out of the way. Tana getting aggressive, going for an Ore Master. Spirit Walker's Grace Hex is not going to be dispellable for the team. No D-Curse. Triple crowd control. Good counter aggression from nLite as they bounce off the push of Zizon.
Yep. Kara and Zuniaki, they're going to be turning their attention over onto Jamie. If they can get Jamie and Nerd Rage clumped up, that's when they can start getting a lot of cleave damage. Tana traded out his Trinket as well as his Spirit Link Totem to allow Kara to hold on to that Divine Shield. So Kara still has that major defense, and he will be the main target for Zizon moving forward. decent damage on Zuniaki as well. He has to be careful he doesn't overextend, but I think in general it's going to be Kara that they decide to go after in this matchup. 20% dampening. Drainer, 20% mana. Tana doing way better in that regard. The Blessing of Wisdom really paying dividends here in this matchup for Tana to allow him to keep his mana nice and high. And I feel like that's what this matchup really could come down to. Once Drainer's out of mana, it's going to be difficult for him to deal with the damage coming in from the Retribution Paladin and the Arms Warrior. There's just so much consistent damage in the match. With the Mortal Wounds effect from the Arms Warrior Mortal Strike, Zuniaki is going to be able to reduce healing even further. Then it becomes a nightmare for the Mistweaver Monk to really deal with.
All right, Astral Shift traded by Jamie
drink.
out of the way. Drainer holds his team in the fight by regenerating a lot of mana at critical mass of dampening. Wind Shear onto Drainer, stun onto Nerd Rage. Jamie still the target, but Ring of Peace protecting them, well positioned by Drainer. That lines up Jamie to get a Stormkeeper. His Lightning Bolts are going to be huge for the next 2 casts. Who is he going to go after with them? He's trying to go after Kara, but not even really scratching the surface there. Intimidating Shout onto 2 members. Jamie has to use his Fire's Medallion to Tremor Drainer out of crowd control. Nerd Rage looks to respond with an Intimidating Shout of his own, but not really getting too much. Hex from Jamie could be game-breaking with the Lightning Lasso on Zuniaki, but not enough damage, unfortunately. Perfect crowd control by Zizon, but not enough damage. It's Jamie and Nerd Rage now on the back foot as Drainer has basically burned the mana that he drank seconds after the fact. This is not good for Zizon.
Definitely not good. I mean, Drainer is just burning through his mana so quickly in the match. Jamie's really struggling to get away. Ring of Peace comes in from Drainer. Really good backup to allow Jamie to create some space. Now Nerd Rage taking some pressure. There's just so much consistent damage coming in. I feel like that Avenging Wrath from Kara is going to end the game in the next... I mean, if they don't win at this point, when that finally does come up, Drainer's going to be out of mana, and I think it's just going to be way too much damage for them to deal with. But Zuniaki also getting targeted down. They have to be careful. Tana doesn't really have too much healing. Kara, he has the Blessing of Protection. Is he going to trade it out? They basically barely hold on. Zuniaki stabilizes, and now it's Nerd Rage that's in trouble, Sid.
This is back and forth between Zizon and nLite, an evenly fought battle so far. Deep into dampening. Jerry comes out of the stun, needs to connect some heals ASAP. Nerd Rage is still low, but there's no crowd control. They should recover. nLite switch targets instead, going after Jamie, trying to expend even further mana from Drainer. Drainer moves in, looking like he wanted to go for a leg sweep. He's going to Ring a Peace Kara away. Paralysis the Shaman. Zuniaki still the target. Zuniaki anticipating an attack here as he pushes forward, activating Die by the Sword. This is so that he can prematurely avoid being disarmed. This is going to be a strategy that both warriors implement against each other. While disarmed, they can't activate their most defensive cooldown, the Die by the Sword. So Zuniaki was anticipating that move from Nerd Rage, but now that it's out of the way, he's not going to have it at all. They use the disarm onto Nerd Rage, but they're still targeting Jamie. Bit unusual there. Grapple weapon selected from Drainer as well, so it could be an extended disarm chain on the side of Zizon for victory, but they need to recover, but they have no mana and they've got no cooldowns to do it. If Kara connects, Jamie's going to go down.
Yeah, here's the Avenging Wrath. This is what I was talking about. It's just too much damage. Jamie trinkets. He's trying to cross the map as fast as he can in. Ghost Wolf does manage to do so, but now Nerd Rage, he's been left all alone. Jamie casts out the Stormkeeper. Is it too late? Too little, too late. Do they have the damage? Zuniaki getting a little bit low, but Drainer, he's just struggling to heal through this damage. Avenging Wrath paying dividends for nLite. Jamie getting low. Nerd Rage as well. Life Cocoon trades out. That's the last defense Drainer has for his team. If Nerd Rage falls, that's going to be the first point for nLite, and it is nicely done with the Ret Pally Warrior, and I feel like we have to shout it out. I mean, nLite, they're playing these off-meta healers like the Discipline Priest, like the Restoration Shaman. I think most players in the game right now consider Restoration Shamans completely non-viable, and here they are making it work.
Yeah, no, really impressive stuff coming in from nLite. Super impressed to see them win once again against Zizon. Like last weekend, we were talking about Zizon on Sunday when they lost. We were like, why are they playing the Destruction Warlock? Surely the Elemental Warrior is the answer here. And I talked to Jamie after. He was like, yeah, we should have played Elemental Warrior. Here they do play at Zico. And once again, nLite, you know, unfavored potentially in the matchup, or certainly that's the way you'd think on paper. But they pulled through with another pretty, I would say, assertive victory.
Yeah, you literally took the words out of my mouth there, because I definitely thought when I saw the comps locked in, I was like, nLite, they should have locked in the jungle blind. they got outpicked here for sure, and it looks like Zizon are going to be able to have the comp advantage here, locking in the Warrior Ellie. It's a strong comp against, you know, double melees, but it might just be the Unbound Freedom giving nLite, you know, that little bit of extra melee uptime that they need. And honestly, they did such a great job as well swapping back and forth. That's one thing you have to commend them for. Whenever they didn't have mobility on, you know, Zuniaki and Kara to reach Jamie, like here, they just swap over to Nerd Rage, and then they hit him, and they try to tax Drainer's mana as much as possible. Tana, he knows, my job is to just stay back, keep my teammates alive, and, you know, try to not tank too much crowd control. If I can push in for some purges, for some wind shears, I'll do that. But in the for the most part, I'm just going to stay back, conserve my mana, and be as defensive as possible. And eventually, they just win, you know. I'm really surprised to see how effective the Retribution Paladin actually is, because usually when we see it, it's like, okay, well, it's a red against the mage, the red loses. Oh, it's a red against an Ellie Shaman, the red loses. But here, the red wins.
Yeah, and I want to talk about this a little bit, because I was talking with Vanguards, and he is a phenomenal Retribution Paladin. He's actually one of our observers guys. He does a great job. You'll know him as a multi-rank 1 red, former BlizzCon competitor, etc. He says that Resto Shaman is his preferred healer to play with, and I was looking at the numbers on Recount for this game. The mana restored for the Restoration Shaman here was 82,000 compared to Drainer's 22,000, and, you know, 65,000 of that is the Blessing of Wisdom. That was the difference in terms of mana. And then to your point about uptime, Kara was actually doing so much more damage than anyone else on the map. He did 8 million damage. The second highest was Nerd Rage with 6 million. So, you know, he's already doing 33% more damage, plus providing that mana regeneration, plus presumably providing a lot of off healing. Really high value for Kara on that Ret Paladin.
Yeah, and I mean, Ret Paladins is usually this kind of hit or miss pick. You pick it and you're going to hard counter someone, or you pick it and you're going to get hard countered really, really hard. And I think this was one of those matchups that, you know, Zizon was going for. This is the matchup they wanted, and they just got owned. And could that be because of the Druid changes, perhaps? Because I feel like if they had a Druid on their team, the Druid can just sneak away and drink more often and survive, and well, let his team survive while he's doing that, and then come back and actually have a mana edge in the end. But they had to go with the Mistweaver now, and Mistweaver, they have great throughput, they're very mana efficient, but once they go out of mana, it's not that easy to get those drinks off.
Yeah, it's not easy to get the drinks off, and the healing just kind of disappears at that point as well. So very well played, well drafted by nLite, absolutely insane. These guys are here to stay very much, but Zizon still have 2 maps on the board. And one of the things we talked about in the pre-game, Sid, that I do want to talk about once again, is the protection, the potential for that protection pattern. Would you like to see it come out, though? We should say it. Words that should not be said.
I think I actually would rather them try Windwalker Ellie.
Windwalker Ellie?
Windwalker Ellie on a big
you
map,
prefer that
and then
to the protection?
Windwalker rolls in, double stuns. That sets up Jamie to go in for burst damage. Then they just retreat away, do hit and run strategies with the Windwalker Elemental. They could even run the double Monk. Then they have 2 leg sweeps. They can do it twice as often. It seems to me that Windwalker is a good pick into the melee cleaves. Obviously, it would be beneficial if they had a Frost Mage. I feel like you just have a mage, almost any mage comp here, and then you're going to be able to stomp nLite, but Zizon is one of those teams that doesn't. They're going back to the Warrior Warlock Druid, and this is what they tried last week, and I'm not the biggest fan.
Yeah, Zico looked really unimpressed by this.
Well, we already saw Method Black play that matchup and lose. We saw
Zizon play it too, twice.
Play it and lose, and we saw Zizon play it and lose as well. And some of those games were close, especially on big maps, but it's the same thing we've been hammering on the Warlock. He has a lot of self-sustain, and he has a lot of damage, a lot of lockdown, but if you decide to turtle and wait a little bit for dampening, then all of a sudden you have a really obvious win condition if you are nLite. So I feel like nLite can just be patient with this one, and they should be able to take down Mercy later on in the game. And well, early on in the game, if he gets his demon armor again, but hopefully he won't make that mistake again.
Yeah, I think that was very much a one-time thing. We actually saw it in the open bracket as well, right? Said that someone...
It's the same team.
It happened, yeah, someone else on the team. Yeah, Nerd Rage forgot his...
sharpened blade.
His sharpened blade because of it. It is something you need to be mindful of with the new essences, guys. Conflict and Strife is one that we've seen a lot of the classes picking up, actually, and it's, if you're a PvP player on the live realms, it's one of the easiest to get for you. I think if you got 1,000 rating and your cap in the first week, you just get rank 2 of that essence. So Make sure that when you're swapping in and out on that one that you remember to re-equip your PvP talents. But once again here, Zizon coming in with an interesting pick. And I mean, I want to talk about this kind of big picture here, because Zizon, this would be the second week where they'll lose to nLite. They're currently second in the standings, but as you said, Venruki, it's very close right now. It really could come down to a case where if Zizon loses this, only gets 20 points, they could get overtaken. Is this a big picture problem for this team? Because compared to Wildcard Gaming, who have the Mage, they have Maro, they really do seem to get countered by some teams that just kind of have an answer for all these melee cleaves.
I mean, at this point, it seems like nLite kind of has Zizon's number, and I think the fact that they picked the Destruction Warlock once again really showcases that. Maybe they're not confident in the Protection Paladin, but to sort of go back to the point about points, it is really important for Zizon.
Yeah.
Right now, they're in a decent position in terms of point standings, but not making it into that top 4 consistently week after week puts you at risk. I mean, if the teams under you are making that top 4, have a really good performance, you get first place or second place, all of a sudden you're feeling really insecure, and that is not the spot you want to be in. You do not want to be on the bubble, as you know there's going to be a team right under you, and if they have a better performance, then all of a sudden you lose your spot. So obviously this is a big problem for Zizon. However, nLite is another team. I mean, what are their points currently right now?
Well, they're currently seeing 152, so they're literally 8 points behind that 3-way tie right now.
Yeah, and nLite, I mean, obviously for them, it's really important that they start, you know, they have to start getting first and second in most of these cups if they want to really secure their position into that top 4. So really intense matchup. I mean, we're in the lower bracket. One of these teams is going to be eliminated, and whichever one does lose, they're not going to be feeling too great with only 2 cups left.
Yeah, I mean, this really, it's kind of like a bigger picture. I want to hem in on Zizon, because at the start of the season, we were really hyping up Zizon. We were like, Jamie plus Drainer, they're 2 people that kind of, we've always thought were really excellent at the game, and they came together to make this juggernaut roster. You know, you've got Nerd Rage, one of the best warriors in Europe. You've got the new Warlock coming in of Mercedes, who we were really surprised by how good he was. He's almost redefined Warlock gameplay on live with this kind of summoning in at the Imp and the Fell Hunter. We didn't see any other Warlocks really using, other than maybe Chanimal a bit with the Succubus in North America. And they've been really impressive. But here in patch 8.2, they have struggled. They have started to fall behind. You know, they already had a fair point advantage, being the second on points by quite a margin going into Cup 3. But if they keep failing to perform, if they get knocked out here in 7th place, they could well not make it to the summer finals.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Whenever a new patch hits, you know, all the compositions get shaken around. All of a sudden, certain healers are getting nerfed, and you have to adapt.
Yep.
That's what it's all about. Zizon, they were quick in the start. They had a good run, but then 8.2 came, and all of a sudden, we're seeing them not get those top finishes anymore, and this could be a big problem for them, because I feel like they need to have at least one more really good performance to kind of not be in that danger zone, like behind them. I think around 60 points behind them, there should be 3 teams that are tied.
Yep.
And all of those 3 teams, you know, if Zizon drops down, at least 2 of them are going to probably go above them in points. So they need more than 20 points. If they get dropped out in 4th place, it's not the biggest deal. But as early as now, it's going to be a problem. And actually, we have seen teams kind of tunnel down Resto Shamans now that they nerfed the Pack Spirit. So I'm wondering why Zizon doesn't do that instead of playing a comp that they know that that they've lost with in the past.
That is an interesting point, and I know you were talking about this one, Venruki, a little bit. The Holy Paladin's potential to all-in. We saw it earlier today with the DK Rogue. Is that something you'd like to see Zizon doing a little bit more, going for all-aggressive strategies against these kind of unorthodox cleaves?
Maybe. I think the one thing that makes it difficult is obviously the Retribution Paladin having Unbound Freedom and Ghost Wolf. It's going to make him really durable. He has the safety net of the Blessing of Protection and some of the heals, but I think Zizon at this point, they need to try something different, because I think going for this kind of consistent damage with the Warrior, Warlock, Druid, I just feel like it's such a small chance to actually win this game. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say it's probably an 80-20 matchup in favor of nLite with how we've seen it played out in the past. I mean, nLite, they're just able to hold on for a really long period of time. Mercy is essentially just a target dummy for Kara and Zuniaki. I mean, they're going to have massive uptime, 90 to 100% uptime in this matchup, besides when Mercy's able to just gate away. And I think eventually Drainer just falls behind. Tana in the late game with Purge, thanks to Blessing of Wisdom, he's going to be able to keep his mana nice and high, and that's when they can go for that all-in and eventually just win the game fairly easily.
I mean, and think about it. Since last week, Sid, this matchup has changed even more in favor.
Worse, yeah.
You know, the Druid's lost 10% of his healing, and he's lost all of that mana regeneration.
That's true. That's a good point.
This is not a good pick from Zizon. Like, this is just, I mean, maybe it's their team and their play style. They're kind of that one of the dampener teams. Like, I feel like they're very parallel with Wildcard Gaming. They like
But they
going
have
for
no
the
mage.
They like going for the safe strategies, but they don't have a mage. So that's what they're missing. The missing ingredient to a dampening team.
Yeah.
Vanguards was saying why didn't I think at the tournament, end of the tournament last week, we talked to Vanguards, who's actually observing the guy operating the camera for you, and he was wondering why does Jamie just not play Ellie Warlock? Like, even he wouldn't want to be fighting that composition on his Retribution Paladin, and it's something we haven't seen from Zizon in some time now.
Yeah, I actually talked to Jamie and I asked him that exact question because we were all saying it on the desk, and he said that he thought the Ellie Destro Pro wouldn't be that potent, similar to what was happening against the WLD, which is why I was so surprised he's locked this in, that the Destro would just die in the late game, even with the Elemental to assist him. But then the Thundercleave was meant to be the answer. It wasn't the answer. Now the Warlock's back in the map, and I think there's a good chance that nLite's just going to run away with this if this is really the best that Zizon have to offer.
I mean, should at least try it. How many times have they lost with WLD? I mean, maybe they lose as the Elemental Shaman Destruction Warlock, but I think it's better to at least try the composition out. But we'll see how this one goes. Like we kind of said, with the changes last week, this matchup should be even more in favor of nLite. How is Mercy going to be able to hold on? Drainer, of course, 10% reduction in his healing since last week as well. He's going to have to go for drinks a lot more in this matchup. Mercy already getting low. Zuniaki, Kara, they're trying to reconnect. There's just so much damage for nLite. The Retribution Paladin and the Arms Warriors just shred the Destruction Warlock up.
Yeah, I do not like this pick at all from Zizon. They're going to, I think, need to bring something here for game number 3. I'm so confident in nLite's capability to win this that I'm calling it only a minute into the game. I don't think they can win on mana anymore. The Blessing of Wisdom going to support Tana. His Chain Heal build makes it so if they're not able to interrupt or crowd control him, he's going to be able to heal through this damage so easily. Meanwhile, Drainer has to heal 2 targets, the Warrior and the Warlock, because they're standing close to each other on top of a Ret Paladin and an Arms Warrior, so it's going to be a bit of a cleave fiesta on both sides, but the Chain Heal is going to do a lot better at healing through that. And Tana has somehow managed to force his Restoration Shaman into the meta. I mean, there's healers that have decided that Shaman is not at all viable, but with this composition in particular, with the matchups that nLite take it into, it's quite formidable, and this is one of them.
I mean, to sort of put it in perspective, after seeing nLite play this composition last week, I asked Vanguards, I was like, hey man, you want to play some Windwalker Retribution Paladin? He's
I'm
like,
down
yeah.
to heal that, by the way.
He's like, I'm down. I just need a Restoration Shaman. I mean, if you're going to play with us, that's great.
Vanguards is playing with me after.
But I asked Cedar to heal us, and he's like, what healer do you want? I was like, Shaman. Yeah, Vanguard says Shaman's really good. He's like, I'm not playing that. So, I mean, that's how far gone a lot of these Shamans are, and Tana still holding it down, making it work. A little bit of damage here on Kara as Zizon has managed to stabilize in the matchup, but look at Drainer's mana. He's already down to 60%. There is decent damage here on Kara, but this is the Avenging Wrath. This is when things get really scary in the matchup. Mercy, he's going to have to hold on tight.
All right, let's see what he can get done here. His healers in crowd control, they could crush through the Unending Resolve. Mercy's just getting absolutely smashed. Perfect crowd control by Tana as well. Mercy on the run, on the ropes with 1 second left. Drainer into a Stormbolt. Perfect crowd control chain by nLite.
Good night.
Outright crushing Zizon in game number 2. Please do not pick this composition again, Zizon. Never again.
nLite coming in with some N-heavy damage there in that game. That was probably the fastest we've seen a Destruction Warlock who remembers to select his Honor Talons die in a game. I think he certainly did in that one. It's just absolutely incredible. nLite, you know, we talk about it. First series of the day, the Holy Paladin wins. Second series of the day, it's looking like the Restoration Shaman's winning. This meta really is starting to blow open. Ret Paladins, Zuniaki holding it down on yet another class, the Warrior, the Discipline Priest last week. It's so nice to see these guys play. I love it.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that, you know, Zizon doesn't have an answer for Ret Warrior. Like, this is a comp that is, you know, fairly hard counterable, but that's also the downside of just having somebody who can't play a mage on your roster. Mage is usually a really good answer to some of these melee cleaves, And, you know, I expected nLite to kind of wait a little bit before they would, you know, go for the kill, but instead they just decided to chop up Mercy immediately. As soon as this match basically started, they got a nice little fear onto Drainer, who had no trinket, and then they just take Mercy down through the unending resolve. A beautiful hex there as well from Tana, and Drainer's trinket rotating back up immediately as that Stormbolt connects, but too far behind, not going to be able to actually keep his Warlock alive.
Well, just think about how nLite closed out the game. They got the Intimidating Shout into a full hex. I mean, the Elemental Shaman has Tremor Totem, he has Curse Dispel. He could actually bully the Restoration Shaman back a little bit more by forcing hexes onto him. I just think overall it's a way better matchup, and I think they threw away their best map. If that is some, I actually feel like they could reverse sweep this matchup potentially with that composition. I mean, of course, there's always the threat that nLite goes back to jungle. I think that's the main problem now. The big thing now is nLite, they're so far up in the series that they get to, even if they lose this next game, it's going to be their pick for the next 2 games in a row, and I think they're just in a prime position.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting, this is an elimination series, guys. The loser of this one will be knocked out of the competition. It's looking like it's going to be Zizon. It's looking like I'm going to be competing with these guys for who plays with Vanguard after the broadcast. We started to say, you know, maybe nLite could lose here to Zizon, but they're starting to prove us wrong. I feel like we just stopped predicting against nLite at this point, stopped predicting against Sunyaki. He could play a Death Knight, he could play another Retribution Paladin, and honestly, I would put my vote in his favor at this point. Now it's up to Zizon. What are they going to do? They're currently Europe's #2 team by a fair margin, but getting knocked out here would definitely be disastrous for their point standing, and quite frankly, I believe their self-confidence in patch 8.2, since it would be a second non-kind of top 2, top 3 finish for the squad here. Interestingly enough, I will say, you know, we talked about the Protection Paladin from Jamie. I was actually playing a couple of games with him yesterday on my Druid, and he was playing Retribution Paladin. So potentially, you know, if they really feel like they'd have nothing they could beat it, they could go for a mirror, but no, they are going to go back to this Elemental. And overall, I think we are probably happier about this pick, at least than the Destruction Warlock Zico.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see now Druid brought into the mix. The Mistweaver kind of fell off eventually, you know, stopped the drinks, and that's it. Tana's going to out-mana with that Blessing of Wisdom. Rest of Druid can sneak away and get those drinks, and also has, you know, a little bit more throughput to make it in those later stages of dampening. So gonna see if that's gonna be enough. I like this a lot more than the Warlock, at least. But like you guys already mentioned, I would have liked to see the Warlock, Ellie, and Rest of Druid. It's what got Zizon super far, and it's what they're good at. And I feel like on a large map, yes, the Warlock is always going to be a liability in some way, but at least you're going to have an Ellie Shaman who can kind of stand between him and the Warlock and kind of just shoot out damage at any melee who's, you know, covering for their lives behind those pillars. So I feel like that could have potentially been an answer, but if they don't want to pick it, it's likely that they already tried it.
Yep, Zizon definitely up against it here. 2-0 down, playing a composition that they've already lost with, though they do swap up the healer. Drainer coming in on the Druid for potentially the final game of Zizon's tournament here in Summer Cup 4.
I'm wondering if the Druid change is going to be enough here for Zizon. They've got a good map to get drinks. That's certainly going to be a necessity for Zizon if they want to have mana moving deeper into dampening. I'm wondering what is the real trade-off of the Druid. Maybe Drainer running the Feral Affinity. They bring in Thorns. Thorns very effective against the Retribution Paladin, the Arms Warrior, not with that much self-healing. You're going to take a lot of reflective damage. But nLite feel confident in Game 3. They're on match point. They're targeting the healer, Drainer. They're getting a lot more spicy, trying to mix it up here. Pressure onto 2 targets. This is looking dangerous for Zizon. Gladiator Safeguard going to proc for Drainer. Nerd Rage was still low on health. Drainer has to recover 2 members of the team here simultaneously. Jumping to Jamie, wrapping around the corner and catching some regrowths, but Nerd Rage was still taking a beating amidst all of that. Drainer anticipates the stun, but it may not even be enough. Big push here by nLite.
Yeah, Drainer, if he gets caught in the stun, it could be over. His Barkskin Ironbark already traded out. He's still low. He's dancing circles around the map right now. Nicely done. Good kiting by Drainer in order to stay alive. That was a really scary situation. You can tell Drainer, he's putting the work on that Restoration Druid to stay alive. Now, Jamie, Nerd Rage getting attacked. Kara, of course, every time he has the wings up, the Avenging Wrath, that's when he's going to be able to get really aggressive, put out massive damage. Full Fear onto Tana. Finally, the Blessing of Sanctuary is going to be coming in from Terra to free him from that crowd control. And there is just such good synergy in this composition that nLite has brought. Just overall really durable, high damage. And I'm impressed that they managed to come up with it and they're making it work so well. Drainer now, once again, caught into a hammer of justice. He cuts across the map to the safety of Jamie, who's going to be backing him up. And now Zizon is completely stabilized, and this is where we've seen a little bit of pressure finally coming in from Zizon. nLite's getting low. This is going to be the Ascendants coming in from Tana. That was his Trinket as well as his Ascendants to empower his heals. He does manage to top his team off, but there was a bit of a cost.
May not have been necessary. The Shield of Vengeance and the Gladiator Safeguard was almost a second health bar for Kara in terms of absorb. I actually am not the biggest fan of that Dyer's Medallion of Tana. Now those absorbs aren't going to be available if that crowd control chain is secured again. With an interrupt on Tana, it's putting him slightly behind, but it doesn't look like they have any follow-up crowd control. Stormbolt, but Blessing of Sanctuary from Kara removes that. Drainer standing on top of Tana. Curious what type of harassment he's looking for. Is it going to be some Cyclones? I think it's unlikely that Drainer's even running that talent. It's going to cost him too much mana. Drainer now in a Stormbolt. His team could be in trouble. What on earth was that hit? Jamie down at 10%, barely staying alive with Astral Shift about to fade, but manages to bounce back thanks to Drainer.
Yep, Zuniaki changing targets. Jamie was able to kite away, and that's the main strength of the Elemental Shaman compared to the Destruction Warlock. It just doesn't seem like the Destruction Warlock has enough durability and survivability to survive the Retribution Paladin and the Warrior. Tana getting swapped to. Good pressure coming in. Blessing of Protection trades out. Really nicely done there by Nerd Rage. Basically solo pressuring Tana down in that situation, forcing out the Blessing of Protection, now landing a full Fear with the Intimidating Shout. And finally, Zizon starting to develop a little bit of momentum.
Yeah, I think switching to the Shaman is definitely something they should be trying a bit more here. They're going to need a composition, though, that beats Ret Warrior and the Jungle Cleave. Maybe the Restoration Druid Elemental Shaman Arms where he gets overwhelmed by Jungle. That is potentially on the table here as nLite have 2 more games to go through even if they do lose this, but right now I'd say that they're in a pretty solid position. The mana advantage is established. Drainer doesn't even seem to care about that, being so far behind on mana. He's actually just attacking Tana instead of trying to look for drinks. Zuniaki looks to connect onto Jamie. The Lightning Lasso is disrupted almost immediately there. It's unfortunate. Jamie's going to lose out on a pretty big stun. Tana gets swapped to again by Nerd Rage and Drainer. They've been 2 versus 1ing him, trying to take him out on their own while Jamie runs laps around the arena, trying to kite Kara and Zuniaki into bad positions. It has been decent, but I think at some point Jamie needs to support as well for these attacks onto Tana to work and net a kill. Finally, Jamie on top of Tana. Big lightning bolts. Nerd Rage is tunneling through with the storm bolts. No Blessing of Sanctuary. Kara is disarmed. He can't counter pressure. They're going to get some uptime. Tana now with Drainer attacking him as well. He is trying to avoid Jamie as much as possible with this box with the well on top. Whoa! Earthshock connects. He needs to fake cast the pummel of Nerd Rage, but he's not getting through it. Now a Windsure as well. He goes for the Spirit Walker's Grace, connects a heal. That stun from Drainer 1 second too late. Now putting Tana on full diminishing return for stuns. It's likely going to allow him to survive much more easily. Drainer now almost completely out of mana, 20 seconds away from dampening.
Yeah, Nerd Rage getting low. Windshear on Drainer. Could he fall? He's disarmed. He can't use his Die by the Sword just yet, but he does manage to hold on. Good off heals coming in from Jamie. Drainer completely tapped on mana at this point. He's only got 10% mana left, Sid. He has to try to sneak away for a drink. He's already committed the Iron Bark. Nerd Rage getting low. Drainer trying to deflect the attack with Thorns, but Nerd Rage he just can't get healed up. Die by the Sword. He gets sniped. nLite is just on fire.
nLite with a very convincing victory once again. It was really nice, lively play coming in from Zizon, but it just simply wasn't enough. Drainer, with all those nerfs to the mana regeneration and the healing, he runs out of mana basically as dampening starts, basically before it even started, to be honest. And nLite with a convincing 3-0 against the current second team in Europe, who very likely at the end of the day will not be in that second place position, Zico.
Yeah, and this was without playing a single game of jungle, so
yeah.
And that was the comp that won them the last cup. So nLite looking like a very scary team. If you don't have a mage on your roster and you go up against nLite, I feel sorry for you. I like what Zizon was doing here, though, in this final game. They started going after the Restoration Shaman, and that is kind of the weakness of the Restoration Shaman right now. If you just try to tunnel them down as much as possible, you keep going after them, you can't take them down because they have to actually fake cast you. So if you're good with your interrupts, you have nice coordination, position, then you can easily land a couple of interrupts and get them super low, combine that with a stun, and all of a sudden Tana can die. But of course, Kara on that Retribution Pala right there removes that Stormbolt, you know, with that hand of Sanctuary, and that's what Venruki was talking about as well. That support from the Red Pala does make it extra durable, this Restoration Shaman, and you know, here there's not really much Trainer can do. He's used all of his mana up and they're just out of time.
Yeah, and this really opens up Europe now, because we will get this point standings up for you guys. Zizon, who were in second place, they were very commanding, certainly in the first half of this season during patch 8.1.5. We commended them endlessly on how strong their roster was and how well they were executing, especially on that Lock Shaman Druid composition, which we would have loved to have seen today. But now, look, they're on 220 points, right? It's like a fair lead, you would think. But with that 7th place, they're now on 240. And Diabolos in the upper bracket, Wildcard Gaming upper bracket, Change My Mind upper bracket, all of those guys are catching. nLite, they're also in hot pursuit. That's 4 teams hot on the heels. Sharks in the water here. And as we do go into that bracket, we'll be able to see that. Look at the teams that could now catch Zizon. Zizon only get 20 points. They're at 240 total now. And that means only 80 points is needed for any of these teams to catch. That's a top 3 finish.